Okay. I'm not sure if this is working. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay. So can you hear me? Sorry about that. I don't know what is going on over here. We got a thunderstorm and all kinds of other stuff happening, and it's holding things up. So anyway, let me go ahead and get started. Since I'm getting started late, I think I can still get this done. So anyway, everybody, welcome to the virtual craft fair put on by my good friend Jamie. All kinds of people all over the place or all over the world are doing demos today. And I'll skip my regular spiel because I'm running late. But today I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to hand chase threads, right? So very similar to this thing here that I got in my hand. And yeah, so we're going to do a little bit of that. All right. So like I said, fortunately, I've pre-set up for this. So I think we're going to be able to get this thing done. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right. So I'm using a little bit of different software. So, be sure to let me know what you think of the production this time around if you've seen any of my lives before. So anyway, the first thing we got this piece of lignum vitae, right? So the first thing is that when you're hand chasing threads, you can't just hand chase threads on anything. You can't use like maple or walnut or cherry or anything like that because the material has to be dense and preferably oily, which this lignum vitae is, right? So first thing we're going to do is you're going to start to make your box, okay? I don't know why I held it up to that camera. But we're going to start to make our box, and basically what I've done is I've rounded this blank out, and I put tenons on both sides so that it can be mounted in the chuck, and I've parted off the lid, right? So we are working on the lid right now, and the first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that these walls are relatively straight. So I have a little trick for that, right? So I'm going to use these Vernier Calipers. Probably mispronounced that. And basically what I'm going to do is set these up full depth inside the lid, and I'm going to lock that down. Okay? And I'm going to check the fit, and it fits pretty good there. So as I come out, it should fit the same. You shouldn't have any slop on the outside, and you know that if that's the case, if it fits the same in the bottom and in the top, then you know that the walls are straight. I don't have to demonstrate that because I already did that. The last time I did a demo on this, it went over an hour, so I went ahead and set things up early to make sure I could get this done. Let's see. So let's talk about the tools. So there's some tools that you need, and some tools you must have, and some tools that help things along a little bit. Oops. So these are the threading tools. And both of these are going to be matched. These are 16 TPI. And these obviously you're going to have. And in order to cut the threads, you're going to need a place, particularly the interior ones, you're going to need to cut a little recess behind the threads to give the tools a place to exit, right? So that's what this tool is for. And all this does is cut a little recess behind the threads to give you some room to work. That one's not completely necessary. You could do that in a variety of ways. And this tool helps to measure the difference between the threads on the inside of the lid and the sizing of the threads on the base of it. Will be easier to see as we go. And this is a tool rest, which allows you, instead of having to use the tool this way, you can use it, you can reposition the rest and use it from the side. Okay? So we talked about all that. Let's get down to it, especially since we're running short on time. All right. So the first thing we're going to have to do is, get to this view here. Zoom in just a little tighter. All right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to cut a little chamfer right here on this edge. And we're going to do that's going to help us to start cutting the threads on the edge. Easing that edge is going to really help to get that first set of threads going. So we're going to go ahead and use a spindle gouge here, and we're just going to come in and cut a little bit of just a little bit of a chamfer right there on that edge. Okay. All right. That's all we need right there. And then we're going to start cutting our thread. So this is the inside cutter. And basically the way this is going to work is a scraper. So we want to have this set. We want to have this set so it's cutting just about on center. All right. I'm going to switch back to the dual view, because I want to talk about how this motion has to work. So essentially, what happens is, as you're cutting the tool is going to be advancing itself as it cuts that thread forward. So what you have to do is, you need that. We talked about that little recess in the back, and you're going to need that so that you have a place for the tool to work past the bottom of the thread, and then you'll have to release it and then pull it back and then go back in. So that's the motion you want, this oval motion right here as you're cutting your threads. So let's go ahead and cut the recess back here. We're going to use this recess cutting tool. And I'm going to use a little bit of light here because my eyes ain't what they used to be. And basically what we're going to do is just go in here and cut a recess. Okay. Not sure if you'll be able to see that, but there is a recess cut back there. This tool is also sharp on the front, and it is a scraper, so you could also use it to help clean up the bottom. Well, I guess the inside of the lid of your box. Okay. All right. That ought to do. And now that we have that, we can go ahead and start to cut our threads. And like I said, we cut a little chamfer here. So our first passes are going to be real light, and we're going to kind of move across that chamfer until we get a tooth established. And once we have one, I don't know if tooth is right, but once we get that first little bit of the threads established, then we'll go ahead and work our way around until we're putting the thread straight on into our lid. I didn't really leave enough room there, so I'm gonna go ahead and relieve just a little bit more to make it a little easier. Okay. All right. So we want to get our speed down pretty low for this. We're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 RPM, 250, 300, somewhere in there. All right. Let's clean out some of these shavings. Okay. All right, so we're going to be about 300 RPM. And then we're going to, like I said, we're going to work across that bevel first to establish the first couple of threads. So here we go. And it's much better to create a, let's see. It's much better to take a lot of light passes versus one heavy pass. Let's see if I can get this zoomed in a little closer. Okay. Go back to that. You want to make more light passes than heavy passes. And the tool will track right back into the existing threads. Okay. So let's check it. All right, we got one good thread right there. So we're going to start to move around. Make sure. I think I'm a little high on that. Pull around. And it's important to disengage before you hit the bottom of the lid, because otherwise it'll continue to traverse, and with nowhere to go, it'll just break your threads off. And as we form better, as we have more well-formed threads in here, we can continue to move the tool around straight till we get to a vertical or a parallel cutting with the walls. Okay. For this, you want to have a little toothbrush handy so that you can brush the sawdust out of your threads, and you can check your progress. Now, the tops of these threads are a little flat, which you may or may not be able to see. And that's how I know I need to go just a little bit further. I need to work with the tool just a little bit longer. Check and make sure. Yeah, we're good. All right, so we're looking a little better, just a little bit longer. Trying to especially keep a good eye on the time. All right, let's take a look. All right, I think we're doing pretty good. Yep. I know it seems like it takes a long time, but if you try to rush this thing, you'll just end up with really poor threads. So it's worth taking a little extra time to make sure you got it. Okay. All right. So clean that out. All right. So now that we have that bit done, we can take this out of the chuck, take the lid out of the chuck, and then we can start to size the inside, or the male part of the threads. So here's where we are so far. Got some nice threads. Let me see. It's always hard to figure out exactly where this is on the camera, but we got some nice threads there. As I slowly move out of frame. There you go. All right. Okay. All right. So now we're going to use this tool right here, which is going to help us size the tenon, so we can cut threads on the bottom of the box. So this right here, this tool has settings for a 10 TPI, 16, and a 20 TPI thread. And basically what it does is it accounts for the difference between the accounts for the difference between the threaded part and the threads on here, and make sure that the tenon is wide enough to allow threads to be cut on the other piece. So we go ahead and open this up. Once we do that, we're going to lock it down on both sides. All right. And now this distance right here is what we need to thread the base of this piece. So I'm going to chuck that up in the lathe. And we're going to get back up to turning speed for this, so we can work this, so we can make a tenon on this thing. I'm going to use my beading and parting tool. Okay. Get the speed back up. I'll take off a little bit and then check it and see where we're at before we go pulling off too much. So we're not quite there yet. Where's my... So I'm going to have to take off a little bit more to get down to the diameter we need. Okay, a little bit more. So I take off just a little bit when I do that, because the thing you got to remember is when you're trying to sneak up on a fit, you're taking off the same amount from both directions. So it's best to take off small amounts at a time to make sure you don't over. Okay, so that fits. Awesome. So you can put that away, and then we can extend this tenon back so that we have enough room to cut the threads in this piece. All right. And now that we have our tenon, we need to cut a recess in the back to make room for. We need to cut a recess in the back to make room to make a little area for the tool to exit out of the work. All right. Take that back just a little further. Okay. And that cut only needs to be, I think it's 1.5 millimeters or so. So not very deep at all. Then we're going to take our speed back down to, well, before we do that, we're going to miter that corner, or chamfer that corner just a little bit.